So, about Somnath temple. Okay, so Somnath, okay, is one of these Jyotirling. Okay, the first one in India. Okay, and it's a beautiful temple. But more importantly than being a beautiful temple, or just as importantly, more importantly, I'd say, is that it's a very important temple because it's a very important part of the story, the master story. So essentially, first thing I want to do is acknowledge, right? Acknowledge all that was given, all that was offered, right, to the lingam, to the temple, to the sanctum sanctorum of the temple at Somnath. Okay, and we're talking about everyone giving everything that they had, and not only physical possessions, but also everything that they could of themselves as well. You know, it was built basically as the hope of all those in the area that all came together to build it as the hope of everyone, right? And the reason it was the hope of everyone is because it was built in a way where it was built it became a created center of creation. Okay, so it's a very, very important spot, a very important spot. And I will actually also reveal that it was directly God's plan. Okay, and he worked with all the people who built the temple and who maintain it, and the practices there, the lingam and all these things. When it was created, it was part of his plan because there's a very specific reason why it was built as the center in this way. Okay, a created center of creation. Okay, and you can kind of look at it when you look at the all this the everything that's there in the sanctum sanctorum, right, in the temple. You know, and all everything that's there, you know, and it's also there's also a very important form of the goddess there, right? And it's actually a very interesting one because what you have here in this case is you have essentially it's kind of a complex story, but you have a form of the goddess, but it's also a statue holding like Vishnu, but it's a form of the goddess. There's a form of the goddess that's held in that place, right? And with the only purpose of maintaining all the energy that's in that place, right? In that lingam, right? And in that spot, as a hope, as everyone put all their hopes into that lingam, into that center of creation. Now, basically, so to create that as a center of creation. Now, what the reason that God was so implicated in it as well, you know, as a very important project of his, okay, is because what happens is in that area, okay, God, when he's here as an avatar, okay, becomes the center of creation. Okay, the center of creation, right? So we have the physical center, which is Kailash Mountain. That's the center of creation in that sense, right? The center of creation, the physical center. But when God comes, he represents one of the gods or the god of the mountain of Kailash, right? Shiva Baram, okay? Shiva, right? Kailash Mountain. And basically takes an avatar, right? So at that point, yeah, that's how it is. So there's a lot of important things about this temple. Okay, so as the avatar, he becomes the center of creation. He becomes the pole, the axis, the katub. He becomes the Ashriya Buddha. He becomes everything. He's God on earth, right? An avatar, right? But looks exactly like you and me. You know, very simple. You know, an avatar doesn't look like any other species. He's going to be of the species in which he was born, right, at that point, you know. And other types of beings are being enlightened as well and can come back after enlightened into body, become a descendant, something like that, right? Okay, so that's right. So to get back to the temple, right, everyone gave everything they had, everyone in the area, everything they had to this temple. And the reason it took so much from everyone, okay, and everyone's aware of this, but that's why it was still like that, is because it's actually a receding lingam. Okay, so what happens is the reason it's a receding lingam, it means basically that it takes in all the energy it can. And it was built that way on purpose, okay? And that's why when you look at it, you see there's a deity. When you look at it from the center, there's a deity behind, okay? And that was saying, remember, the Vishnu and the goddess are both here in this temple. And then basically you see there's a little bit of water that comes out outside of the bull's face, all right, the bull's mouth. But it's not much water, it's limited, it's controlled, it's basically making it thirsty in a way, okay? And by making it thirsty in that way, what happens is it's purposely being made receding as a lingam, okay? And what happens is it was created that way so that it would pull in all the energy of everyone around, everything that everyone has, instead of projecting out, to build. And that's why the goddess is there, right? For the purpose of that, right? To use all that energy to build up a center of creation, okay? And from the center of creation, and from that building a center of creation, we know that basically, as you look at things at the macro and micro level in creation, microscope, whatever, you see the same patterns at the micro and macro levels. In the same sense, by making something the center of creation, whatever is programmed into it, right, as a purpose, will spread to all of creation, right? So for example, if you have a lingam that's, for example, programmed, to basically propel the Dharma forward, and all these different things, well then basically, if you can make it the center of creation, well then at the center reflects in everything else and is connected to everything else. So that's why this lingam was made this way, as a receptive lingam, to make it so that it would draw all the energy. And what was the hope of all the people? What is the hope of all the people? The hope, essentially, is that the lingam will be activated by God, right, as the real center of creation. Okay, as the center itself of creation, okay, whether that be for a period of time or not or longer, okay. And the reason that God has it as well, that participated in this project, it's because it's convenient. He can store the center in that location, okay, and then he can take it back if he needs it. He can store it in that location, and by making that the center, all of basically the prayers and all the best hopes of all the people, the people who have faith and who really hope for the best for all of us, all those hopes can basically come true as that programming, reprograms as the new center all of creation and some of its elements. But it's just like a temporary depositing of the center there. God remains the center, but it's a temporary depositing, sort of like just like a container in which God can put the center, or put this in the center. Look at it that way, but this is actually the container that holds the center. One God wants to just deposit there. And basically by putting it there, this creates a sense of wonder and peace within people, and happiness within people, and people are going to be less depressed, and people are going to be just have better lives in general. And it basically also programs and reflects all of creation with the peace of life, so that it can do it as a machine. Basically, it's like a machine, right? It's a construct that has a purpose, right? This area, right? And basically, so that it can be used to kind of automate the process of just, the change of creation, so that God doesn't necessarily have to always be actively focusing on that, if you want to see it that way. So that's why for God, and that's why the reason that the other day it was activated as the center of creation for a period of time, and everyone felt a lot of peace, and that was only for a few moments, but there's a time when it'll be activated sooner, and for soon and for a longer period of time. All right, and then just the effects of having it as the center of creation and hold the center of creation will bring many wonders and beauty to creation. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why this temple was created this way, in a receding way. Okay, the temple, so that it could draw all the energy necessary of everything that they could put into it, everything they could put into it. And they made it the lingam receding so that it would draw and pull in everyone's energy, right? So that it could all be put together, all that energy, right? Condensed, if you want to see it that way, all accumulated, right? And when it became the center of creation, all of that energy could be used to make as a modification as far as possible, and as fast as possible, and as effectively as possible. And there's other reasons as well. Okay. So that's why this lingam was created in that way. Okay. Now at this point, this lingam has been activated uh, by an avatar, and it has been made the center of creation for a period of time. So it's been the center of creation. Isn't that fun? All right. Isn't that cool? And so it's a very important temple, one of the Jyotirling temples, and it has a whole story basically behind it about why it's built in the way it is and why it's a receding lingam like that, to draw in the energy of everyone that comes to it and willingly gives their energy to it, so that it can become the center as it's built, that whole sanctum, that center room, that sanctum sanctorum, as the center of creation, so that it can reflect on on all of creation as it becomes the center of creation, and basically take what was stored inside the lingam and make it reality in all of creation. Okay, so a very important machine in that sense, a very important one, and very advanced technology, if I can also say that way. You know, so other applications of technology that are beyond the smartphone, for example, but that are quite as important. So, in that sense, a little bit about Somnath temple in India. Okay, and there's the whole element of the goddess that's trapped there, but at this point, the goddess, she's been released. Okay, from that temple, because essentially, I've talked in other videos about how some stories can be built to capture you, right? So the temple was built in a way, essentially, with a light trap, right? In that way, where anyone who would see it through a screen, for example, a sanctum sanctorum, or anyone who, for example, would go to the temple and see the sanctum sanctorum, a part of them would remain in the temple, right? It was capturing a part of everyone, all their energy and all their being, right? And all that way. So a very intense temple, very important temple, and definitely a temple that I think it's important to give to, right? Because it is a temple that holds the center of creation from time to time as a container, as the lingam is a container where God deposits the center of creation, sometimes to rest a little bit, before he picks it back up and starts working on creation himself. Okay, so a little bit of a resting tool for God. Okay, so basically, once again, the center of creation is deposited inside the lingam, rests there in the container, and then God takes it back when it's time for him. And that's basically also, I hope in one way, responds to the prayers of everyone who's given at that temple, and I wish them all the best. So I thank you for listening to these words. I hope you've learned a little bit about Somnath Temple, a Jyotirling. If you don't know what Jyotirling is, I suggest researching it, right? A pillar is an important one, and a pillar, we know a pillar, we want a pillar to be solid, right? We want a pillar to be, on a good foundation, and we definitely like a pillar of light. especially when we know that light can often be seen as knowledge. Thanks for listening.